Welcome back. It's me, Lou, and for today's drawing, we're going to dig a little bit deep into my past. And when I say that, I was kind of inspired to draw from my childhood. And with most of my drawings I've been doing recently, I'll go through my collection of action figures and I'll find something I might have an attachment to or something that I think might look visually interesting. So I kind of like transported back into my head like when I was a 6 or 7 year old, and I thought to myself, what was my favorite toy or action figure? Since I was little, I had a lot of them, so I couldn't just pick one. But then there's always one action figure that when I think of my youth, it always like comes back to me, just because it was so colorful and so interesting, and it's such a bizarre character. So for today, I'm gonna draw this guy. This is Trapjaw from Mattel's Masters of the Universe. The most popular character from Masters of the Universe is He-Man and also his arch nemesis Skeletor. Well, Skeletor, he had a lot of he had a bunch of henchmen that follow him, all these evil warriors, and this is one of the guys in Skeletor's employ, and this was Trapjaw. Trapjaw was cool because he was a cyborg, so I don't know his full backstory, but when I was a kid, all I remembered that Trapjaw was half human, or I guess humanoid, and half robot, which explains this robot arm here, and his legs kind of look like, I'm not sure if it's his armor, if these are supposed to be robotic legs. And they call him Trapjaw because he doesn't have a normal fleshy jaw, he has this chomping metallic jaw. And the cool thing about Trapjaw, one of the things that really gravitated towards when I was a kid was his accessories. And Trapjaw came with different accessories they could swap out into this arm, because this is his robot arm, but as you can clearly see, there's no hand. Oh, I also have to mention that this isn't my original Trapjaw toy from childhood. So He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, it's pretty big. I mean, it's always been kind of big with like toy collectors, but it's kind of like making a comeback. It's kind of going through like a weird renaissance kind of deal. So the company Mattel, they're kind of like not necessarily rebooting it, because they're reissuing all the original characters in their classic vintage look, but the toys are made more with a modern aesthetic, since toy technology is so much more advanced than it was in the 80s. So this guy has all the different movements of articulation, and the plastic quality is different, and it's just the engineering's a lot better than it was in the 80s. The old 80s figure, I think like the joints and the hips and the lower waist was like held together with like rubber bands. But going back to Trapjaw's accessories, he came with a laser kind of gun, a claw, and he also came with this hook. And it's neat because you can take him and you can like take his robot arm and attach the different accessories. So over here he has his projectile weapon, his laser gun. He has a claw over here to substitute a hand. And this seemed kind of redundant to me because it seems like a hook and a claw are kind of almost like the same things. And then over here is a hook. You know, if you wanted them to, like, I don't know, do stuff that you could do with a hook, which, I don't know, maybe like hitch a trailer or something. Okay, yeah, so I'm going to draw Trapjaw. Like I said, he's really neat. He has this cool chomping feature. He has this little, I'm not sure if you can see it on the camera, but on the top of his head's like an eyelet, and you can like thread a string through it, so he could kind of like, what's it called? Repel, or, damn it, I can't remember the term for it. I don't know, well, I don't know, you get the point. He had this thing that I always thought when I was younger that looked like a wrestling belt, and since I'm a big fan of professional wrestling, I always liked this belt doodad here. His colors are really neat. It's kind of like a neon green, neon pink for a helmet. That doesn't show up very well on the camera though. And he has this maybe like a coral, dark aqua blue kind of deal for his flesh. Yeah, so we're gonna draw Trapjaw. So let's get started. Like most of my drawings, I think for this guy, I kind of want to draw him I just kind of want to frame this upper half of him, or at least from the chest up. For me, I just want to be able to get in there and draw a nice big face, nice big expression, and I don't know. We'll see. So let's place his head first. I want his head to be nice and big. Let's clean this up. I don't want this line here. Yeah, so Trapjaw was one of my favorite He-Man characters as a kid. And I was a big fan growing up, as most kids were in the 80s, of like He-Man and whatever cartoon they were shoving down our throats before school or after school. And I just remember really enjoying the He-Man cartoons. And Trapjaw was so cool because he seemed so different in the fact that he was a cyborg, and he just looked... The toy was a lot different because it looked like they put more thought into him. The fact that you could swap out his weapons, and they gave you 3 weapons, and he had that little doodad on his head where you could like attach a rope to him, and so he was very high on the playability factor. And as a kid, I got a great appreciation for that. Whereas like He-Man and Skeletor, whereas they looked more like barbarians. Trapjaw to me, he looked like something that was a little bit more, I guess, like post-apocalyptic, like almost something out of like Mad Max, except like since he was blue and green and pink, a little bit more, I don't know, maybe a little bit more punk rock. So I'm just gonna come in here and figure out where his head's gonna be. I think I made his helmet a little bit too far down. I don't want it going down that far. Now, he looks like he has a normal nose. It's a little bit bigger. And his eyes, he has these, they look very big and round. I'm not sure if that's something... Yeah, we'll keep it in that way. I'll just keep him nice and big and round. And his eyes are black, and he has white pupils on the inside. I don't know how I feel about that yet, but we'll add that. I'm gonna make one eye a little bit more squintier than the other. I don't want it to look too. I don't want it to look too symmetrical, so I'm gonna make his face look a little bit more asymmetrical. I don't think he has ears. No, he doesn't have ears. His helmet's covering his up. The top part of his mouth is just sharp teeth all about. He almost reminds me, I mean, in some ways when I look at him, especially with the sharp teeth, kind of reminds me of the James Bond character, that Jaws looking dude. I think his name might have been Jaws. 3, 4, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 teeth. Let's add another set of teeth. So in this Masters of the Universe, you can always kind of tell who were the bad guys and who were the good guys. The bad guys, they were often very monstrous-looking dudes. You know, you had guys like Beast Man, you had guys like Merman. Whereas He-Man, all his, all his buddies, they're all very heroic-looking. And the bad guys, they're all more like the misfit-looking dudes. And as an adult looking at the character designs, I'm more drawn towards the villains just because I like their aesthetic a lot better. I like how they look a little bit more menacing. They look kind of wild. And as an artist, for me to be able to draw something where I could take their features and exaggerate it a little bit more is it's always a plus. This is going to be his helmet. It's going to be the top of his helmet. Early on, I think I might light this guy might light him from the bottom. Let's get his jaw drawn in here. Now, for me, getting his jaw right is kind of gonna make or break the figure, or at least not make or break the expression of the character. I just got to make sure that I get the shape right because he's very iconic with the Masters of the Universe characters, and I don't want to take too many liberties. Like, I've seen some really cool different interpretations of the character online from other fans, and they're all really awesome. Some add like I've seen some with more of a steampunk kind of aesthetic, some with more like a goth kind of feel to it. I'm not going to take too many liberties with his face, but I do kind of want to make the teeth on his bottom jaw just a lot more sharper than they are on the top. I can't tell. So the inside of his mouth is just plain black. I'm not sure if I want to go with that or give him a tongue. But like I said, I don't want to take too many liberties. So I'll probably just end up blacking it out. Just make it gross inside and add like saliva and stuff like that. Alright, so that's going to be his head. I kind of drew his head at an angle so it looked like he's almost charging at you. I'm just trying to plan out the shadows right now if I get around to them. I mean, I will get around to them at some point. Now, I want this guy to look kind of menacing. So I'm just going to give him a big back. And just exaggerate the arch of his shoulders. Like for me right now, nothing about this guy is going to look conventional. Everything's going to just look really weird, wild, and just out there. I really want to emphasize how unique this character is. Now, on this, on his left shoulder, kind of has this, almost looks like a weird axle kind of deal that runs through his arm. So that's got to be sure to include that. Like all He-Man and Masters of the Universe figures, this guy has like a ripped, chiseled chest. Now I know that in like the world of like toys and action figures, especially like with girl dolls, there's always been criticisms that like stuff like Barbie kind of creates not realistic body image kind of like ideals. And I think there's that whole thing where stuff like Barbie, she looks flawless, and then they don't want that, parents don't want that, and certain critics don't like that because for little girls growing up, it kind of creates this unattainable sense of value, self-worth and beauty that you can't attain. And I think at the same time, it's almost like a weird double standard because you never hear that criticism about boys' action figures and toys. Because when you look at them, they're always so ripped and muscular, and it's like no dude's gonna look this jacked unless he's like, on the juice, if he's like saucing up. And it's just a weird double standard like that. Like, how come there's never any criticism for like, these superhero figures and toys create unrealistic body image issues with like boys and their self-worth and stuff? Because I think it's just as valid. I personally love the fact that these figures are gigantic, but it's just a weird double standard that we could be so critical of that. Barbie looks flawless and this and that, but some of these action figures, the male ones, they look like Greek gods, and it's perfectly fine, and no one says boo about them. Yeah, his shoulders here, I don't know if they're too crazy looking. Alright, I'm liking this. Let's bring him down a little. This guy looks like, I don't know, it looks like he's turning into Quasimodo. Let's just bring him down, his shoulders, just a little bit more. I don't want it to get that crazy. Or I feel like it's losing something now. I like the first set of shoulders I drew, but they were just too crazy high. I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but let's just meet it halfway. All right, there. It's going to look weird. It's going to look weird. It's based off a toy. Okay. So here on this side of his body, on his right side of his chest and upper torso, he has this giant armor piece thingamabob. I think the original toy, you can actually take it off. This one, it's like molded on, which is kind of disappointing. Yeah, so let's just draw this big giant thing here. Should have planned his drawing out better. This arm, his right arm's kind of going off a little bit further this way, and I'm not sure. I really want to include his forearm in one of those robot bits, but I'm trying. With the way I have things right now, I'm trying to figure out where I want to put that, or even if I could fit it right. Sometimes when I reach situations in drawing anatomy that don't make sense to me, I just go with it, and I just start I rely on foreshortening and overlapping a lot, and I'll just start placing things on top of each other, even though it won't make sense. But I'll just draw it all really, really big and overlap it. So any weird inconsistency or flaw in the way it's anatomically structured, I think you just gonna have to take it, because since everything's gonna be overlapping, you can't make sense of it. But there's something about that quality that's gonna make it look not right, but believable. Like, okay, I'll just take it then. So I'm gonna kind of rely on that here. I'm just gonna start drawing his robot arm really big and hope that whoever's looking at this will go, "What? That looks right." I really like drawings, for me anyways, the stuff I like to draw. So like I said, I'm more gravitating towards portrait stuff, because I just love stuff that's a little bit more in your face. I'm not always a big fan of drawing full body shots, or even just medium shots, because compositionally for me they look kind of boring. It looks like it's almost kind of like, hey, I know how to draw anatomy, and look at me, get my proportions and measurements right. Whereas with the way I work, I like stuff that's going to be flawed. It's going to have errors in it. But I kind of want to capture a certain amount of intensity in what I'm doing. And I think any kind of flaws I have then I'll make up for it because of that. So everything about this guy so far is just hyper exaggerated. Alright, so I'm kind of caught in that deal where I don't know what to do right now in terms of how to place stuff. Yeah, this isn't... He looks interesting, but anatomically, the way I have his robot bits kind of laid out, it's kind of looking not how I intended it to. But I'm just gonna keep on going with this, and I don't know, if I could make it flow, I can make it flow. If not, I don't know, we'll figure it out. really don't want to use a ruler. I'm trying to get his arm to line up. All right, there you go. So what I have this drawn right now is that this arm's coming out at you. This arm's underneath that. And then here's his head. All right, I think I'm good. I'm gonna start. I can actually start inking it, I think. But I think I'm missing a couple of details. He has these little, almost looks like his arm here looks like a gear with some of the teeth on the gears. So I'll just add those real quick. Yeah, it doesn't look right. Let's fix it. Okay, so let's start inking this. I think I'm happy with it. Like, I don't know how to sketch with, like, lightly. I'm very heavy on my pencil when I sketch, so my lines are just a lot thicker and darker. And that could sometimes work against me. Alright, all my Sharpies. Okay, let's figure out which one I want to work with. So I'm gonna work on the forearm first, or the arm that's in the foreground first. So we're gonna work on his right arm, then we'll work on the left shoulder, then we'll work on the head, and then afterwards we'll save the body for last. So let's just start inking this now. Can't see this line here correctly. Where is it? So I'm going in here and for the contour line that outlines his right arm, I want to give it a heavier line weight, probably twice the thickness of this Sharpie, just to create more layers. So it looks like each piece of his body is kind of layered on top of each other. It gives it a little bit more depth. I'm not sure if that's necessarily a normal, conventional way of doing things, but I kind of have a background in graphic design, and sometimes I like to take the elements that I've learned there and try to apply it to my illustration. Even though the sensibilities are somewhat the same, but then I think there's a little bit different. So, Trapjaw. Yeah, Trapjaw's a cool guy. Like, if they ever made a live-action He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon, I think Trapjaw would just be an incredible character to see come to life. Alright, there's that. I'm almost tempted to make this line even thicker, just to get even crazier. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to make this line, this contour line, a lot thicker, to the point where it's going to seem excessively bold. Line weight's one of those things I always try to be very conscious of as I draw. When I was in college, I drew a poster of Batman and Robin and a couple of characters from his Rogues Gallery. And I wanted to figure out a way to separate each character from each other, because they're kind of the composition. It's not like they're all standing in the same space. I don't know what the term for it is. It's a, I don't know, montage or whatever, but all the characters kind of layered on top of one another, and I wanted to break them up. And I found that if I adjusted the line weight on some of the characters, like if I made the line weight on the characters in the foreground bigger than the characters in the back, they'd have more pop to them. And then I found that if I just made the line weight a lot heavier, a lot more bolder, I could get away with this creating a lot of depth without, necessarily relying on shadows and lighting. So for that, I'm going to use that kind of thinking here. Okay. And then should I trace his head now? Yeah, I'll trace his head next. Let's trace his head now. I like working in Sharpie a lot, because even if I get a dull Sharpie point, I can still work with it. With the duller points, I can get fatter and thicker lines. I even enjoy working with Sharpie markers when they're running out of ink, because that way I could produce different effects with it, like feathering or creating almost like stuff that looks like a brushstroke kind of deal. So if you look here, each one of these body groups are composed of different line weights. Let me add the shoulders real quick. And then you'll see what I'm talking about. So his right arm has a really big, bold, thick contour line, because I want that to pop at you the most. I want this to be like coming at you. Then his left shoulder up here, the line weight's bold, but it's not as thick as this, so this kind of falls back underneath it. And then his head and shoulders, the line weight's not necessarily minimal, but it's still a bolder line, but it's not as nowhere near as thick as these two. So this kind of falls more towards the back. So I'm going to come in and start defining these shapes more. One thing I should have thought about earlier is that this guy has I'm drawing a lot of ovals and circles with a marker. This coming in hot without a really well-defined line. So some of these things might look a little imperfect in terms of the curvature and the arches, but I remember in school there was a tool that we were introduced to. I think they were called, it's like a template for drawing circles and squares and ovals. I think it was called, like, I want to say it was French curves. So it was almost like a ruler, but it's flat plastic, but instead of this being straight like a ruler, it had all these different curves to it. So you could, like, hypothetically speaking, you could like draw any shape, any round, circle, shape, or oval using this template, as long as you knew how to navigate it and turn it around in the correct positions. It's kind of something I wish I had in my arsenal of drawing tools, but I always forget about it. I don't know, maybe next time I'm at the art store I'll pick one up if I see it. So this dude here, he has different details on his arm, on his robot arm. Over here he has like these raised panels and lines, and I kind of forgot to draw that. I could still add them if I want, but I kind of want to give him these steel coils around his arm, because I like drawing steel coils. So they're basically just segments. There we go. I think you could get a better idea of foreshortening with them, because this is almost like a cylindrical tube-like shape, and with these little bands, it looks like it's going back. Oh, I missed that line by a lot. I'm gonna have to make sure all my other curves and lines work with it. Dang. Captain's such a cool dude. It's like in my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video, I was talking about how colorful some of those characters were, and it's the same way with the Masters of the Universe stuff. All these characters, even though like He-Man and Skeletor and other characters like Man-at-Arms and Evelyn and Teela, even those are kind of like the bigger characters that always stand out in the forefront. These other characters, they're no less interesting in their own right. Each one's very unique in how they look. And I can really appreciate that. You know, whoever designed these, there was a conscious effort to make sure that each character was unique and they weren't being redundant with something that was already been done. I mean, there was Fakor, who was fake He-Man, but he was blue. So that, I guess that's kind of redundant in some ways, but he's blue, so. You know, I'm not liking this curve. I'm not liking this curve. I'm not liking this curve. Yeah, this curve didn't come out right up here. That's gonna bother me, but let's make do. You see, right here, it's gonna bother me. Oh well. I think I've given up on the fact that my videos are not going to be as short as I'd like. I'm just going to have to live with the fact that they're going to reach upwards towards an hour, if not a little bit more. Well, I'm not sure if I like this one either. They might have messed up. Shit. Nah, it's not perfect. Oh well. I should have planned some of this a little bit more, but like I said before, I kind of like drawing I kind of like to make things up as I move along, just because for me it keeps the drawing interesting. I'm not looking at the same image for like an hour or two. It's always going to look a little bit different. You know, every time I add a new line, there's something about it that's just going to break up what was there before. I'm not sure if that looks right. That doesn't look right. That's all right. Let's add his clavicle area. It's gonna be his neck muscles. I'll come back and adjust the line weight just to break things up, but for now I just want to get all the major stuff traced out. I'm not happy with that either. See how this is round, but then this one kind of caves up more. Oh well. I'm also regretting the fact that I'm not using different pointed Sharpies. They're all the same. It's all the same line weight right now, so I need to change this up a little, give it a little more variance. Let's see if I can find a pointier one. If you heard that's my stomach growling, I'm very hungry. It's like in the morning, I haven't eaten yet. So if you heard my stomach grumble, that's because I'm malnourished at the moment. I really should be using a finer marker right now as I'm tracing the teeth because this marker isn't as sharp as I'd like, and I don't want this teeth to come across dull, but I'm already committed to this, so we'll try to make it work. Yeah, so I'm looking at his jaw right now because this is just going to come across flat. I'm looking at this, and his jaw is just flat. There's not like any sort of details or... Here's this here. Okay. Whoops. I don't want that dot. And then let's draw his brow. Get that in. His eyes are black. Okay, I want to race around his mouth just because as I'm filling in the inside of his mouth, I want to make sure I'm not messing up the teeth. All right, there's his mouth. Let's get his nose filled in. Now, right now in my head, I'm trying to figure out... So as I'm nearing completion of this outlining the shapes and tracing and inking these major bits, I'm right now running in my head about once I get to the finer details, what I have to do to make things pop out from like how am I going to make the head pop from the shoulders, how I'm going to differentiate the arm from the rest of the body, because I need to figure out how your eye is going to flow in this drawing right And that's the point where mentally I'm kind of thinking about that. So as we can see here, I got all the major bits inked in. That bothers me. Fix it, fix it. Yes, okay. Alright, so we have that done. So all the major body groups and all the big points of interest are all accounted for and everything's filled in. So I'm going to come in here and just start erasing the pencil lines so I can get to the parts of the drawing where I could give this a little bit more polish. Alright, so we're nearing an hour into this drawing. So I'm calling it now. This could be the longest drawing I've done so far, because I think the amount of detail I want to add to this is gonna just take a while. I don't necessarily play it safe and draw small. Everything I have to draw has to be really big and in your face, very smash mouth. When I was younger, I wanted to be a comic book artist. I mean, I kind of was a comic book artist for a little bit. I just never worked for any of the big companies. I did some freelance work, self-published my own comics. I did a comic strip for a fashion magazine for a couple of years. And, you know, for me, it was always a learning experience, just trying to... I study a lot of different comic book artists, a lot of fine artists, a lot of master artists, graphic design, and just try to figure out how I could merge everything into my own style. And I always found that the stuff I was drawn towards the most was the work of artists who really made good use of the page. They'd find a good way of balancing positive space and negative space. They'd always be really good about figuring out contrast. And the things I always kind of took away from that was, I told myself, I want to draw big. I want everything to look big. I really want to fill up the amount of space I have possible. But at the same time, I have to remember when to give breathing room, how to make your eye move around, and other things like that. And then as I grew much older, and when I was in art school, and just through other studies and research, I kind of learned more about how to, grid a composition. There's, I think, stuff called the rule of thirds. There's the golden rule. Yeah, I'm kind of regretting that I went in so heavy with the pencil. These lines are a pain in the butt to erase. Alright, I think this is going to be the best I could do. Okay. Alright, so here we have Trapjaw. It is very basic. You can kind of tell where everything's at. And let's start rendering this out. Let's work on his face first. Now I said previously that I kind of wanted to light this from underneath, since he's a villain. And villains always look better when you light them from underneath. So kind of get in there and make these lines a little bit finer and start adding in some detail. I like this part of the drawing now because during this phase I'm trying to figure out the light and shadow, and since I'm kind of making this up as I go along, everything's more fluid for me. It's gonna be there's gonna be some trial and error. Sometimes it's hit and miss, and I kind of like that. I always told myself if I make a mistake, I never pull out a whiteout pen or anything. I just deal with it and try to make the rest of it flow and work around the mistakes. So for me at the inking stage, it's all about commitments. If something's not going to look right, sometimes I just got to tell myself, okay, this is it. Just deal with it. Now I'm thinking about maybe rendering out his jaw so maybe it looks a little bit metallic. So I'm going to go about and do that. Now I'm not necessarily sure if my style of rendering metal is the right way to get metal across, because it's kind of hard for me to define different kind of textures, especially with a pen. And I remember once there was an artist in high school, and he was kind of teaching me the way he did things. And he's like, if you want to show metal, kind of like draw these kind of like curved, pointed, sharp lines around the edges to kind of accent the form. So he had a really cool way of doing it. See, there's a highlight here. And maybe there's one here. And then we'll do the same for his teeth, just to give it a... So they come across sharper. I'm just gonna kind of accent the edges just a little bit. And let's do the same up here. Let's start detailing the top of his head. That's going to be metal. This is going to be metal also. So let's... Yeah, so I want the dome on his head to be really shiny. And I'm trying to convey that here through these kind of like jagged, curved, I don't know, dagger-like kind of lines. I just gotta remember it. I don't want to overkill it, because if I do, it'll lose this metallic kind of sheen and texture, and I really don't want that. So yeah, this kind of has more. His helmet here has much more reflective quality to it, or it just looks shinier, and that's the point I kind of want to get across, as opposed to the rest of his head here. And then his jaw gets shiny again, and it'll start to play out once I start fleshing out more of the rest of his body. So I'll show you in a minute. This is gonna be black. So that's what I'm working on right now. This is kind of like the rim of that giant piece of chest and body armor that's all black. I'm gonna kind of fake the musculature on this part of his shoulder. I mean, the whole all his musculature is kind of faked at this point, but I kind of want to really get across the point that he's being lit from underneath. So I'm gonna approach this by leaving some areas of muscle up here, just so I can render it out to give you an idea, like, oh yeah, he's being lit from the bottom. Okay, so I'm liking this a lot. I like the sense of contrast here. And now I kind of want to figure out how am I going to do this, the rest of his body. Let's do this. So I'm working on his upper left shoulder right now. And since I'm lighting it from the bottom, I'm trying to create that illusion of shadow and shade. But I want to keep this texture looking different than this. That's why I'm not going as heavy with the black. Like my way of drawing, it might not necessarily be right, but it works for me. Okay. And then I'm going to recreate that effect on this side. So the way I always thought drawings work is that your mind processes everything. Like drawings, it's essentially just a whole random bunch of scribbles and doodles, and stuff could be methodically put out, but it's your brain that's going to make sense of everything. So I think if you know how to speak to your brain visually, it'll start telling you, okay, this is where the light's coming from. This is going to be this form. This is going to be that shape. And I'm going to do the same for the neck muscles. Try to keep in mind where the lighting's going to come from. And I'm just going to shade and give each muscle and neck group its own kind of attention and make sure that I'm getting the point across and just rendering it out right so that your brain will look at it and go, oh, okay, so this is how it's working. All right, I think I'm working on, I believe this is the clavicle. I'm not 100% sure on my anatomy, so I think that's his clavicle I'm working on right now. It's kind of like the apex of the chest where it meets the pit of the neck. I'm probably wrong, though. And let's figure out these muscle groups. Okay, his chest muscle is going to be like this. So right now everything's kind of uniform in the sense that you could tell each muscle group's being lit from underneath, from right here. So here's the light source, and then it's going to look lighter here, shadow, lighter here. So in some ways you'll understand where the peaks and valleys are a little bit better. Yeah, he has these segments that divide this part of his arm. I'm trying to get that in right now. And just like here, I kind of want to render this in a similar fashion, just so you could tell he's being lit from underneath. So let's create some light and shadow here. I'm not sure if it's smart to go in raw like this. I should have maybe planned it out better. Okay, it's kind of working. I'm still toying around with the idea of taking some of these drawings and then doing a video where I'm actually coloring them in Photoshop or in Procreate. Okay, this is officially the longest video. I really hate myself for doing these long videos. But I don't know, the drawing quality, I think, it's not going to suffer. The longer the video is, it's just going to help it, so I'll just have to deal with it. Alright, so now I'm going to do this part of his arm. Alright, this is looking really neat. I'm liking this a lot. Alright, trap chart coming along just fine. Alright, 118. So I'm at 1 hour, 18 minutes so far. It's the longest video so far. It's also one of the cleaner drawings that I've done. The other ones aren't as... Some are sketchier than others, but it's like I told myself, and I haven't mentioned this in other parts of the videos, that as I move on, I want to make sure that the videos I do, they just look progressively better than the one that came before it. So if I can make this video look a little bit... If I can make the drawing look a little bit more thought out, a little bit more methodical and deliberate than the one I did, you know, yesterday, whatever, that's good. I don't want to really necessarily plateau and all my drawings kind of start looking the same. So if my art style changes up every now and then, that's not necessarily intentional, but I think that's just me trying to push myself and getting more out of the time I'm investing in this. Alright, we're going to come back to this marker, a little bit pointier one. No, it's dull. Dull. Where's the sharp one? Dull. Dull. Alright. Let's make do with this. So now I'm going to render out the detail in his arm. Alright, so I'm filling... So for these metal bands in his arm, his robot arm is mostly black. So I'm going to try to give this a contrast ratio of maybe 80-20, where it's 80% black, 20% white. But I don't want to overkill it, because if I do, it'll just flatten the drawing out. So I still have to remember that I have to maintain some sense of depth and contrast. And that I don't want to do something that's going to pop out one thing more than the other, or some of the adjacent or neighboring body parts or body groups in this drawing get kind of either pushed too far into the back, or it defeats maybe what I rendered out earlier. So I just got to be more mindful of my line work here right now. Especially since I was playing around with different line weights. Right, I gotta figure out how I'm gonna render this out. I don't want to lose some of these shapes. Alright, so if it's being lit from here, this is gonna stay white. This should it stay black? I don't know. Alright, I'm gonna risk it. I'm gonna fill this in black. I could go further. I could go all the way. Let's do the same for here. And so right now I'm not very comfortable with what I'm doing right now. I'm not sure if this is necessarily the right thing. Because I'm not sure if I kind of want to add more lines to this arm and give it a little bit more texture and create a little bit more value, but at the same time I'm really worried that if I do, it's going to flatten this arm and it's going to lose the illusion of it coming at you, and it'll feel equally weighted as the rest of the drawing, which I really don't want. Okay, I'm going to take a big gamble here. Yeah, so I'm going to take a big gamble, and I'm going to start rendering out stuff in full black that I'm not 100% sure if it should be black, but for the point I want to get across in this drawing, I think I might have to. Okay, I'm really wanting to wrap this video up too. I don't want this to go too long. It's already nearing an hour and a half. Okay, so what I'm thinking of making most of this here. This one area I'm drawing on right now, this part of his left shoulder, I'm thinking of making this mostly black. I'm worried it's gonna flatten the arm out, but at the same time what I'm hoping is that it'll pop out the rest of the bits and pieces of his arm that are extruded. So let's pray that I'm right. Okay, so I'm filling this out, and I think it's working. Let's see if this is working right. Yeah, it's kind of working. It's giving me a different sense of value than... Crap. Okay. Alright, that worked. I'm happy with that. So, but I still need to do this part here, and I'll recreate this kind of effect here just in a minute. I forgot this part of his, I believe that's his traps, his trap muscles. All right, where's that one Sharpie? All right, here's a sharper. Here's the sharp Sharpie. I'm so frightened right now. There. And I can get that one line in. Let's get that in. This is making me nervous. I'm so worried I'm gonna like slip. All right. All right, chapter. I think you could be nearing completion. Alright, so right now I'm just trying to figure out if I want to cast a shadow in the background to give it a little bit more lighting. And I think I kind of want to do, it's not a whole lot, because I'm worried about this. I don't want to fuck this up. I don't want to mess that up. So let's do that real quick. I just gotta be mindful of where I'm making these lines. So we'll give him a little halo around here, separating from the background. Then I'm going to add a little shadow. Alright, we're at 1:32. Way to go, Lou. You made your longest video. It's going to take forever to upload. If you're watching this, I also want to say thanks. I don't always necessarily pick the things to draw, which I think people are necessarily going to like Google or look up on YouTube. I think I kind of told myself I don't want to be one of those clickbaity kind of people that like I don't want to take the new hot thing and just do a drawing of it because it's hot. Like, which I realize it gets the most likes and the most views and stuff like that. But I don't know, it just feels kind of cheap. Like I always think it's kind of lame when like a movie trailer comes out, or if there's a hot movie and then someone's like, hey, you know, I'm gonna draw, you know, the Mortal Kombat trailer came out, I'm gonna draw Mortal Kombat. And it's like, come on, would you be really drawing Mortal Kombat otherwise? So for me, I'm just kind of going for more of the deep cuts kind of stuff. Like if you're a fan and you're hardcore passionate about stuff and I'm drawing something obscure or a little bit under the radar, I hope you have an appreciation for it. And it's like, oh wow, that guy's actually drawing that Trap Jaw Dude. So if you stuck around for an hour and a half to watch me draw Trap Jaw when you could be outside playing or doing something else, you know, thanks. Trap Jaw. You are looking badass. If you're a fan of Masters of the Universe, I hope that I did this character justice. I think people, when they have a certain affection for, especially characters of fiction, they kind of have a certain way that the character is projected in their mind. And if I'm drawing close to what you see as your version of Trap Jaw, cool. If my Trap Jaw looks off, I apologize. Woo! Trap Jaw. Get her done. Come on, we're almost done. We're almost done. We're almost done. The timer's ticking down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're done. Okay. So let's take a look at my Trap Jaw. Just give me a moment here. I need to move some things around. I'm getting some glare here I don't want in the corner. Where's it going? Okay, that's better. Okay, so this is my Trap Jaw. He's a neat fella. I like him a lot. If he was my neighbor, I'd definitely invite him over for like turkey dinner and Thanksgiving because I don't know, he's pretty cool. With that teeth and those chompers, he could definitely go through the leftovers. So yeah, this is my Trap Jaw. Thanks a lot for sticking around for almost an hour and 40 minutes. I greatly appreciate it. I realize these videos are a time suck, and for me, it's like they'll just suck me in, and I don't know. Well, I gotta take off soon, so as always, my name is Lou, and it's March 5th, 2021. Thanks for checking out this video. I greatly appreciate it. Take care, and I love you all.